Hello and welcome back to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Alan Hyde, and tonight we're joined by a special guest. Tonight's guest is here to speak with us a little bit about treating first responders, working with trauma, understanding some of the nuances and breakdowns of diagnoses, proper information on different diagnoses depending on the conversation we get into tonight. So if this is information that may benefit you, we highly encourage you to stay locked in as we sit down and discuss tonight's information with Dr. Stephanie Miller. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good.
Good. Yeah, we were settling in and chatting before. We're going to get back into a lot of the information we were chatting about before, but you work in private practice. You have a group practice called Element Counseling, and that's located in Arlington, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. And you have a team with you. They're all first responders or veterans.
Yeah.
We want to hear all about it. So why don't you fill us in on how that started and what got you into all this?
Yeah, for sure. So I started out way before I was a therapist, doing contract work with the government and the military through a random set of circumstances, but ended up doing that for a while and kind of just evolved into like, man, I really like this environment. Let me go see if I can be in the military. So I was 32 and went off to basic training and spent 10 years in the Air Force after that. And then through my own journey and experiences and trying to navigate some exposures and things that weren't great, came back and ended up shifting into mental health. So while I was finishing my service, got my master's in professional counseling and then started getting into therapy. Worked in a lot of different environments for a lot of years, hospitals, group practices, did some solo practice stuff for a while, and then eventually kind of found my little specialization in working with veterans and first responders specifically, and then that kind of evolved into Element Counseling over the years. So we just opened our first physical location in September of last year in Arlington. We were doing all virtual work before that, but have really just created a group of professionals, licensed clinicians and master's level interns that are going through school and working towards licensure that all are either veterans, current law enforcement, or former first responders, and are now doing mental health and focused on trying to help heal some of the hurt that those types of jobs and helping professions cause over time, that repeated exposure. So that's where we're at now.
Yeah, which I imagine is a natural lead into discussions that are really popular on social media these days, but discussions on trauma and having a deeper understanding, not just of what post-traumatic stress disorder is, but trauma and how it impacts. You had shared something before when we were sitting down and getting ready for the show that I think will be really beneficial for those listening along, as well as, you know, some of the differences in how working in law enforcement or working as a veteran, those traumatic events distinguish themselves from early childhood traumatic events. And I think maybe getting into the weeds a little bit to clean up some of the information we can obviously run into on the internet as best we can here tonight might be worthwhile.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of different kind of angles that takes. One of the things we also do is educate other therapists on how to work with veterans and first responders because it is such a nuanced thing. But having childhood trauma that doesn't get treated can create really long-term effects, right? Our identity, our sense of self, our attachment styles, the way we connect, the way we see the world. It's a bit different as a first responder, and I kind of just put first responders, veterans together, but as a first responder, because you're trained to be exposed to that trauma. So there's a whole different aspect that comes out of it. You can be exposed to a ton of trauma and still not be traumatized because you've been trained for it. You've been prepared for that trauma. At the same time, you're also trained to compartmentalize and to be desensitized to things. So understanding how it's affecting you and to what degree and what's normal in that environment compared to what wouldn't be normal becomes really tricky. As a clinician, right? Like someone comes in and they tell you they've had all of this exposure. They've been shot at. They've been in blasts. They've been bombed, these kinds of things, right? that we think of when we think of like law enforcement or veterans or first responders, fire, EMS, right? Like you've seen awful things. And so you must be traumatized. And then we really get into like this diagnostic kind of tricky area where if they're not having a reaction to it, we attribute that to numbing and still call it a symptom, right? That it's still symptomatic. You're detached and you're numb. And so we're still calling it PTSD. But maybe I just was really trained to do that and it really doesn't bother me. That doesn't mean that it's clinical, right? So separating that out is just super important, not only for like treatment and that we don't over pathologize things, but also to help that first responder understand their experience better. There's a really weird kind of nuance that happens in that field where when you do have an exposure and you are having a reaction to it, you get kind of stuck in this no man's land almost of here are the people that I could talk to that understand this, right? We've trained together. These are the people that know what to expect in this field. So they get the exposure and they're not scared for me to talk about it. It's not going to overwhelm them. But we're also trained to cope with it. And so are they going to think I'm not capable, that I can't do my job, that I'm not strong enough if I talk about it? So that's kind of off limits. And then if I come over here, and that's not even getting into the fears I have about what happens to my job if people know that I'm having a reaction.
Right.
But then if I come over here and I talk to the people that understand the emotional side and the emotional response and won't think I'm weak, what are they going to think about knowing what I've had to do, what I've seen, what I've done? Am I going to traumatize them because they're not trained to be able to handle the things I've handled? So then where do I go?
Yeah.
Right? And then we get into, well, you can go to your therapist. Okay, but that's translating everything I say if that therapist doesn't understand that language, right? And we speak in acronyms for everything. So there's that piece. And then what happens if I report certain things to you? Does that get put in a note that my command finds out that gets me disqualified from my service at some point?
Yeah.
There's a lot of concerns when it comes to navigating trauma and working with it in that population. It's a lot of layers.
Yeah. A couple weeks ago, we had a conversation with another law enforcement. He's retired from law enforcement, he's a therapist, and we talked about that whole concept of a fear of being labeled in law enforcement as not fit for duty. And there's shifts in it, and we talked about some of those shifts that good people have fought hard to really change. Sure. But it's not all the way there yet, and society certainly is the last to catch up on those things, which leads back to, for those listening who might not know what over pathologizing things mean, why don't we describe that a little bit, and then maybe we can lead into some of the social media conversations and come back to the first responder stuff.
Yeah, so we were just earlier having a conversation about, when does it become diagnostic and when is it just your personality or when is it just an experience? So one that I get a lot separate from trauma are clients that will come in and say, well, I want to be assessed for OCD. Like I think I have OCD or autism. So we do a lot of testing in both of those areas. And when I ask, okay, tell me what's making you think you might have those things or you might want to be assessed. And there'll be things like, well, I line things up very straight, like everything has a place and it needs to be in its place, for example, right? Okay, but does that mean you have OCD or is that just your personality? You just like things to be neat and orderly because that's your comfort area. Or do you think something bad will happen and you can't leave your house until it's straight and lined up and it starts impairing your functioning, right? And so when we talk about like over pathologizing, it's taking things that are just part of a human experience sometimes, and it's just your personality or your preference. And then we view it through the context of it being bad or wrong, or you have to change and fit into this kind of box. And now it becomes a symptom that we attribute to a diagnosis instead of it just letting you be you,
right?
Kind of thing. When we let people just be themselves and it be okay, there's a lot less distress about being yourself. So now it's not something that we've got to fix. It's just learning how to embrace the parts of you that make you you. So the over pathologizing comes from when we misattribute things to be something that has to be changed, when it's really more about just accepting yourself
Yeah.
and who you are.
Which I think if we were to oversimplify, right, the problem that
Yeah.
exists a lot of times with sharing mental health information on the internet is that balance between letting yourself be human and perfectionism. All right. Because as I was listening to you, this is the tricky bind that when you're scrolling through your feed, you see is like everybody wants to own the symptoms that then could mean that they fit into the mold of a diagnosis. But if you actually talk to that person in real life, they want you to think they're perfect.
Yeah.
All right. And that's the bind of modern day society. Look how perfect I look. But no, I'm just as fucked up as you are.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, both
It
of
can't be
those.
too perfect.
Yeah. It's not siloed, right?
Yeah.
You have to merge this human experience. And the internet is such a ground where you don't have to. Right? You could show one video here and 2 days later show one, and it can be two different
You can be all the different parts of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a specific answer for this, but it's always a question that's kind of rolled around in my head as we've gotten more into this age of social media. And it's been around for a long time now, but I came up before any of that existed, right? Before the internet and those kind of things. And yeah, there was still that challenge of finding where you fit in and how to fit in and those kind of things, right? But it just seems so amplified now with the reach that social media has given us and all of the influences to be this or be that or do this. And just all the things that come along with it, right? The pressure that comes along with that to morph your life into something that fits into a box, I guess, but like which box?
Yeah.
Which box do you fit in on a given day? Yeah. And what if all the parts of you don't fit neatly into one box? And then what do we do with that, right?
Yeah, which, you know, it's like, here's another interesting one with the internet too, is like people will give themselves names on the internet. And I was listening to this thing where people now become resentful of their online persona. Right. So now it's another avenue in which to be, you know, quite frankly, mean to themselves, and they beat their image up. But similarly to the conversation about compartmentalizing, right? It's like it's not done on the internet oftentimes in those ways in a healthy manner, right? So these things get internalized, and this is why you see like streamers who go to other countries disrespect their laws and get shocked when they're arrested.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of stuff where sitting down to have these conversations are so important, because that's the model. That's what kids are watching. They're not watching this.
Yeah.
We hope that eventually they would. Maybe when they grow up a little bit, they do. Our average audience is definitely 18 plus, but I think it's really harmful when that's the message that's sent out, is like it's okay to be disorganized.
Yeah, it's like, you know, society, we go through these shifts, right? It swings. And I know generationally there's a really fairly significant period of time where it wasn't okay to be disorganized or to have different parts of yourself that fit into a bunch of different categories, or you just needed to fit into whatever your local community looked like or your family's traditions or religious beliefs or whatever it was. It was very like linear in that sense. Why I went into this field because that's what my dad did. And so this is the way I live because that's what my parents did. And this is what I believe because that's what they believed. And then we kind of went in this very opposite direction where you could just, in a good way, be anything and do anything. But I feel like we missed a lot of steps along the way of how to support and then normalize that okay, be all the parts of yourself. And then you don't have to be everything that this box says you need to be to fit into that, or just be this one. Like, be who you are here when you're here, and then be who you are here when you're here, and which parts of you are authentic in different settings. That it doesn't mean that you're not being your true self just because it shifts a bit in different settings. That's making sense. But I feel like that's hard for people to grasp because we get stuck in like, we just have to be one way all the time.
Yeah.
The person I am as a business owner is not exactly the same person I am as a mother or as a friend or a partner. There's variations, right?
Yeah.
And if,
Yeah, I'm not even the same person when I'm hanging things on the wall.
right?
You know,
No, I'm not a good person when I'm doing that at all.
especially if it's crooked, I'm like, shit. Whereas in other settings, I'd be totally chill. That one just
Absolutely.
revs me up.
Yeah. But if we're learning through learned behaviors, family, society, whatever it is, that you've got to be this thing all the time, especially if you get into those modes of like, here's my public persona, whether that's through social media or it's as a police officer or as a veteran, like that thing that we hang our identity on can really like screw us up when we let it be our only sense of identity and our sense of self.
Right.
There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of gray area. I think therapy, mental health in general, has a really fantastic opportunity to really not teach people just how to deal with depression or how to deal with anxiety or those kind of conditions, right, or circumstances, but how to really just learn who you are and embrace who you are. When we kind of just take the pressure off of it, and we just see things like life is an experience. How did you experience it? And what meaning do you want to take from it? What do you want to hold on to? What do you want to let go of? Like, none of it has to stay.
Right.
Decide what you want to make it mean and how you want it to fit into your sense of identity instead of shaping yourself to fit that, whether it's trauma or it's autism or OCD or all of the things we talk about, right? Like being affirming and just embracing the parts that make you you instead of pathologizing and everything is now a symptom that has to be medicated or changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Before the road leads to inevitably, no matter what, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have such an opportunity that you were highlighting. It's like back in the day, you had Socrates and Plato, and you had philosophers, and they were rare because fields like this were rare, right? Because when it's about survival, the vast majority of us who may not have been like the number one philosopher, well, we're out in the fields doing our duty, you know? And now, right, with the way society is, we have such an opportunity to understand these things on a deeper level and spend more time studying them. And naturally, you're going to run into the barriers where people are going to push back against that because it is a guidance position. So there's going to be people who are just naturally so hurt, right, that they're not looking for another place of guidance. The people who are entrusted to do that hurt them, right?
Oh, for sure.
So I'm not going to trust anyone else to, especially being a male therapist, I see that one often where it's like, I'm not going to trust another dude to come in here and be a guidance role for me. Screw you, bro. My dad used to hit me, you know, or whatever it is, right? A million different examples. But that is then what gets interacted with, I think, in a viral sensation on the internet. That's what sells, is all the stuff that the sickness would propose as opposed to what the philosophy and the grounded nature of truth would propose.
You know, as you were saying that, what was popping in my head is and I don't mean to undercut it, but the idea, right, that it's okay to not be okay. Yes. But do you want to stay that way?
Right.
Like, it's okay to not be okay. That's normal. An abnormal experience with an abnormal response is normal. Right. If I have a traumatic exposure and I have a reaction to that, that's normal, right? So in that sense, yes, it's okay to not be okay. But do I want to live as not okay?
Right.
And at that point, now we're talking about motivation for change, agency, understanding that it can change. Not being okay doesn't have to become who you are.
Right.
And then what are you willing to do to get there? Right? Yeah. And so I think in that effort to accept people where they're at, to meet them where they're at, to meet them in their pain or in their suffering, we've sometimes gone a bit askew in saying, okay, that's where you're at, and so we're just going to let you kind of stay there, and we're just going to make it okay, and like check on you every now and then, and make sure you got a blanket, and like just kind of let you live here now. Right? And that's just who you are. I equate it to like this Eeyore syndrome. Like he's always sad, and everyone just accepts that he's always sad, but nobody's ever asking him if he wants to be better, if he wants to like change anything. It's just, well, that's the way it is, and that's just how it's always going to be, you know. There's a lot we could do.
Well, especially, I mean, that's the truth. Brass tacks. And
Yeah.
I think really with anybody who comes in, no matter even how severe, sometimes it's like, let's say someone comes in and they have bipolar disorder with manic presentations, a traditional bipolar 1 case.
Yeah.
We've got a bunch of things we could do to help you, whereas 30 years ago, we may not have. It's like they would have tried to shoot you up with some lithium,
Yeah.
and that was that. If it doesn't work, it
Hope
doesn't
for the
work.
best. And
Yeah.
just move on. Yeah.
And even then, that helped, right? And it opened the door for a lot of other ways with those treatments to work. Like even schizophrenia, we didn't know anything about it 60, 70 years ago, nothing, right? And now we can treat it and stabilize it, not always, but at a much higher clip than ever before.
Yeah.
And I work with 12-steppers. So I always tell them this generationally is that especially the generation before you, the work was presented to them and they flat out said no. And it is now on you. And you have to ask yourself, am I ready to say yes? And that sucks, right? But this is what accountability is all about. This is, it's like, especially with the men I work with, is like, are you willing to crawl over the broken glass to get this or not? Are you willing to do the hard work? Because if you don't, you're just going to pass it on.
Well, no one can do it for you.
Right.
It's, I think as therapists, we talk a lot about you can't work harder than your client, right? But if you really kind of peel that back and look at what that is we're saying, if I can work harder than you to heal the thing you're coming to me for, that implies that I have power, agency, control over you. So now your progress, your success is not yours, it's mine. So what happens when life slaps you in the face again? It's, you don't know what to do with it. So we start the cycle all over again, and I'm the one that holds the power and the control, not you, right? And so we create learned helplessness in that sense when we do more than what they're ready to do. And I think that's where like the motivation becomes super important to figure out at the beginning, whatever the thing is they're coming to therapy for. How much do you want to know about yourself and how much do you want to learn? And yes, life happened and things happened, and that's an explanation for why things are the way they are. But it doesn't have to be an excuse. And I think those are very different things, right? Like things can change you, but you decide how much and for how long, right? So, yeah, I think just accountability in an empathetic and compassionate way. Accountability with compassion is really powerful.
Yeah, and it's like, here's the axiom right through it. And I know that you would touch on it too, because I hear it as you're talking. It's like right through the middle of that is honesty. There's, if you're ever wondering, how do you strike gold? Is to be honest. Yeah. And that's where you find the compassion. I tell clients all the time, it's like when they're talking, let's say, about friends or family members, like, did that sound very friendly, what they were doing there? Or like, do you think that that's how family members would just treat each other? And it's like, sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for a person is tell the truth. Yeah. Hey, ouch. Like, that hurt.
That's not normal. Yeah. That shouldn't have happened.
Right. I'm not going to be spoken to or treated that way. Yeah. That's honest, right? Because one of the things too that we can never underestimate, and you know this as well as anybody else, is like that person may not even understand that that's how they're being perceived and that that's what they're doing. You may be the first person in their 50 years of life to tell them that they're acting like a jackass. Yeah. And never underestimate that, that that's probably the case.
So this comes up a lot when we talk about boundaries, right? And having boundaries with people and saying like, no, it's not okay to talk to me that way. But you have to first learn that it's not okay for people to talk to you that way. It's like, did anyone ever tell you that it wasn't okay? Or did life teach you that you just kind of had to take whatever people threw at you? And maybe it wasn't safe to say no, or it was so normalized that that's just the way it was, right? So I think first learning that it's okay to want something different, and then how to teach people how to treat you with that, right? Yeah. And then how to hold the boundary. Right. Because if I don't really feel like I have value, then I'm only going to do the thing that sets boundaries or helps put positive people in my life until it starts to feel like there's that pinch point, right? When it feels like I might lose something. Yeah. Then I'm going to back up because I'm scared to lose the thing because I don't really know if I deserve it or not, right? So it's that push-pull between what I'm used to and what's good for me.
Yeah.
it's really easy to go back to what we're used to because new is scary.
Yeah. Who's that actor that played Al Pacino? Why am I blanking on his name? He's super famous, but he has that super famous line in Two for the Money with Matthew McConaughey where he's talking about gambling addiction. He's like, it's the only time I feel really alive when I've lost everything, right? That moment I'm losing everything is the only time I feel alive. And that's true for the addict, we know, right? But that's what I was thinking. His name will come to me at some point. I'll be like, you know, but
I'll remember, or I won't know who you're talking about. But if I did, it'd be weeks from now.
But that's that pinch. The, you know, holy crap! If I don't change, this is going to be real bad.
Yeah.
And this is the fascinating part I've always found about this field is like, and that human being, minus putting themselves in a really dangerous position, is going to be okay. You know, that's my favorite part, I think, about desperation is like, you're going to be okay anyway. And I know this. You just don't know it yet, how okay you stand to be. That's the reality. And I think there's a beauty in the circular nature of healing where it's like you're so close to desperation that your freedom is right there. It's just one step.
What do you have to lose at this point? Like what this thing that your brain is telling you is the worst case scenario, how realistic is that? And even if that worst case scenario happened, are you still surviving it? Like, is it survivable? We don't do a lot of things because it's almost like we don't know that it's okay to step out of our norm. And if my norm has been suffering in whatever way, if it's like in finances or in just victimization or abuse or whatever the thing is, addiction, if that's what I'm used to, that's what's familiar to me, right? Then the idea of change is really, really scary because I know how to operate over here in this chaotic, stressful environment. I know exactly what to expect from people. I know what to do to react to it. And I can kind of preemptively react, which is safe for me.
Yeah.
But when we start to talk about healing and change, that's completely different. It's like you're outside and it gets super cold, you know, when it like freezes here and everything's like miserable. And you get really cold and you come inside and you put your hands under cold water, but it feels hot. It's not hurting you, but it feels like it is because of what you've gotten used to. And so the cold feels better because this is unfamiliar until it gets familiar. And we have to kind of like tiptoe into it sometimes until we get used to it.
Yeah. That was a really good way to put it.
Yeah, I thought so too. Thanks.
I hadn't. I hadn't thought about that sensation too in a long time of like when you're out in the cold and then you put your hand in the hot water. But it's a perfect example of when people think about order and chaos, right? I think the inclination is to think of them as these two separate concepts. Whereas like what you were just sharing is the real clash, is the messy nature of actual healing and order and chaos. Because you can be just as sick and have all kinds of order and be just as sick and have all kinds of chaos. And a lot of times that's where people are coming into therapy. I have all this order in my life and why do I feel like shit? Because everybody's pissed off at you trying to control everything. How about we start there? Right? And then it gets messy because now you don't have any control and we have to confront that. Or the flip side, which you were touching on in that explanation too, is like there's just so much chaos in your life and that's what you're used to, and you have a systematic way of going about that chaos and you think it's all over the place except for the fact that I just met you and I could predict it.
Chaos is relatively predictable.
Like,
at least we know it's messy no matter what.
Right.
There was when I was going through grad school, one of my professors had this motivational poster hanging on the wall of the butterfly and change, and it looks really pretty and all that stuff. And then there was a lecture, I don't know where it was along the way, but someone was talking about that process, and we talk about healing and that it sounds good and it looks pretty on a poster to hang in the office. But if you take that same concept, right, like the caterpillar into a butterfly, it doesn't just like snuggle into a cocoon and like chill for a bit and then become a butterfly. Like, it's messy and it like deconstructs itself and it's goo, and that whole metamorphosis process is tough. It's the same reason that we have growing pains and we do most of our growing when we're asleep, because it's painful and it's hard. And it takes a lot out of us, right? I think the misconception that going to therapy is going to feel great, and then people come into it and they get into the work and it doesn't feel great at first, and then there's that resistance, right? I just put my hands under the warm water and it hurt, so now I need to step back, because the message and the expectation that's been tossed around so much is misguided. Like, oh, you're going to go to therapy and it's going to feel great in 3 sessions.
Right.
Well, it can feel great, but you have to go through the desert first. Like, the only way to get through it is to go through it, and you've got to do the work there. But how empowering when you realize you can do the work and you have the skills and the ability to overcome those things. Not because someone did it for you, but you have that in yourself. Right? And you learn your own strength.
Yeah.
I think that's super important.
Yeah, you have to turn on the faucet. I'm not even going to turn the water on for you.
Right?
Yeah. You know, because in my house, the hot knob means cold for some reason, and the cold knob means hot. So I'm going to, if this is your house, I'm going to let you tell me.
And then we get into all kinds of generational trauma with that. Like, now we're just confused about what's helpful and what's not.
Yeah.
And which side the knob is on.
Yeah, the wires are crossed.
Yeah. But the learned behaviors are big, I think, and good and bad.
Well, even as we were talking about it too, and you could speak way more to this, and in fact, I'd probably just lead into a question with this one, but with first responders and veterans, order often causes a lot of distress for these individuals because, and this is just one, I would say oversimplified example of it, but you come back from serving, right? And it's been order, and you're real good at it. And that's great, right? And I always tell people too, like when someone's sliding it in society, is like, you don't want Joe from down the street who's a slob, right? You want the person who's on the line, ready. Like, that's who you want in those scenarios. And so we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater the same way when it comes back into our society. And that's the disconnect, right? Where you see all the commercials and the sad ways that people try to connect with it that don't actually help when practical services help. But the order is hard to detach from.
Yeah, and the order is super complex in itself. It serves this weird dual purpose, right? Like, the order is there because there has to be consistency, right? It's not about like lining your socks up correctly or making the bed a certain way. It's that there's routine and there's consistency and uniformity. It's creating a group mindset and cohesion so that when chaos comes in, the order and the reflexes are so automatic, you don't have to slow down and figure out what to do. It just automatically happens. It's so, like, that structure that we're taught is not because it's so important to keep things neat and tidy.
Right.
It's because it's teaching your brain how to regulate in a very stressful environment. So, like, when you're going through training, when I was in basic, we were out for whatever class training, something we had to do, and we came back into the barracks, and our instructors had taken all of our shoes and like tied like my shoe to your shoe in a knot, and like there's 60 of us, and we each have 3 pairs of shoes under the bed at any given time. So there's a lot of shoes. I don't do math that way, but there's a lot of shoes in a huge pile, and they gave us 5 minutes to sort them out and put them all back, or we have to go do push-ups. Like, it's an impossible task. But it wasn't about the task. It was about how do we get into our frontal cortex and have logical thought, emotional regulation, impulse control when there's an immense amount of pressure on you. Because when you're preparing to deploy or to potentially go to war, you have to be able to stay in that frontal cortex when you're also in your amygdala, when you're in your trauma response part of the brain, and those two don't work great together, right? They're not supposed to. So the order becomes this weird, tricky thing where we've gotten so used to it, but we've also associated it with a very high level of stress and trauma. So now when we come home and the stress is no longer there, so the order serves a purpose to keep you safe in this very stressful, dangerous environment. But I take the dangerous environment away, and now it's just day to day, but I lose it because things aren't lined up the right way at home.
Right.
Because my brain still thinks there's a danger present because those two things got paired together, right? Like Pavlov's dog kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in that same way with first responders and veterans, that you have to be able to compartmentalize, because you can't do your job well if you don't. If I am a police officer and I'm witnessing an accident and there's a child death, I don't get to have a reaction to that in the moment, because now it's not safe for the people I need to be able to take care of and to control the scene, right? If a suspect shoots at me, I don't get to like crouch and freak out and like dissociate, because that's terrifying. I have to keep going. So I need to be able to compartmentalize and have order and structure. But then when I come home and the danger's not there, and now my family or my friends or whoever want me to open up and be emotional and let the guard down and all those things, right? And don't worry about if we're 5 minutes late. Who cares? It's fine. That doesn't feel safe at all.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing something wrong, and so I just withdraw, right? And so it's tricky, right? Because I can't shut it off, or it doesn't work over here. If I carry it over here, then this doesn't work. And so back to, therapy and how to work with things and normalize different parts of yourself and different parts of your identity. Like understanding why the brain's doing what it's doing, not just the behavior, but like it's doing what it needs to do to protect you in an environment it thinks is unsafe.
Right. Which is the proper assessment of those types of situations, because some of the most powerful ways I've heard from first responders I've worked with, or even veterans, is, well, I would say in this case, especially veterans, I think they have the order and structure to, not to like compare the two, but it's a higher level. To embrace that when you're coming into the calm area, that the order now is that you're the danger. Right? As a human being, we naturally are all capable of being the danger. But anybody who's trained, and especially men I work with, brother, you're the danger, and if you can embrace that, you'll be the most calm dude to be around ever. The most laid back dude, anybody, or woman, anybody will trust you. But if you don't embrace that, and anybody who has in these settings, I think they assess for themselves the proper way that their brain is working, right? They can flip it back and forth a little easier. And a lot of that, unfortunately, but also true, is a lot of that is, how they grew up and certain resilience factors. And that's a tricky business when you're talking about military and the Army. And
there's a reason we all come into these fields. It's not because of the pay. There's, that need to take care of other people or to protect or have a sense of control where we didn't at some point in our life. Even as therapists. We've all got a story about why we chose this career, and it very rarely is it because we just had such a great experience.
Yeah, it's one of Freud's most identifiable theories of we repeat our pain in order to master it, and I mean, that's, it always cracks me up. I mean, I know I did when I was in therapy. It was like the population I worked with was funny. That's curious, right? Interesting. Tell me more. And a lot of people's professions, like you're saying, are definitely like that. Either from the mundane stuff of like, well, that's just what my dad or mom did, to like, well, it makes sense why you're trying to help fix and save in these ways.
Yeah, I think to your point of like learning that in a lot of instances, you're the danger or you're the problem, so to speak. It sounds bad, but like the issue sits within yourself, and this idea of what I think I'm supposed to be doing compared to what's happening, or that I believe there's a threat or a danger present, because that's what's been ingrained in my brain. So the reaction is appropriate if that thing were actually happening, but the thing is not happening now, so we don't need this reaction. I use this example a lot, like when you have the little Ring doorbells, right? And you can adjust like sensitivity of what it picks up. It's like when you've had that conditioning and trauma throughout your life, it's like you just installed the doorbell and the sensitivity is super high, so it's picking up everything. It's like alerting you to the leaf that fell in the yard and the car that drives down the street. But what you really want to know if someone is trying to come in your front door. And so right now, everything is just something that needs the alarm to go off, because that's what we've learned. And then through therapy, we start to figure out it's not that your reactions are inappropriate. They're just not appropriate to the context. So how do we teach the brain how to really accurately decipher when to use it and when to not? And like dial down that sensitivity so the alarm just goes off when it needs to, not all the time where everything is now a reaction and you're in a constant state of distress.
Yeah, letting the tool be a tool.
Yeah.
You know, in the way that you want to use it. It's like everybody's used a wrench as a hammer, but it works better as a wrench. You know,
Oh, it works pretty good as a hammer too. But yes, yeah,
it'll get the job done. Yeah.
right. Big rock, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it to that point, it does work, right? Having the reaction, the heightened sensitivity, the level of control, it works, or we wouldn't keep doing it. It does something for us, even if that's keeping people away.
Yeah.
Right. But at some point, it becomes counterproductive because if I'm keeping people away, that might make me feel safer, but it means I also don't have connection.
Yeah. I think we could tease out this framework too, because as I'm listening to you, like this is the crux of the issue with misinformation, right? It's like, well, it serves a purpose for secondary gains, right? Payoffs. It does something, or else so many people wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But if enough people do it, it becomes a problem. And here we are, right? The pendulum swing you were talking about prior. It's like society is on that swing where we've taken and weaponized mental health. The part where it's useful is that information's out there. The part that has swung too far is misinformation.
Yeah.
Right.
Where everything is something.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes it's just us. Sometimes it's just a reaction. You know, it's normal to be depressed when you've had a loss.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you have depression.
Right.
Kind of thing. I think too that idea that, you know, when enough people start doing something, it becomes problematic. But when that goes unchecked for long enough, it becomes normal. And now it's just societal norms and the way that we live. And we get more and more used to it. Like, for example, before Uber was a thing, how normal was it to get in the car with a stranger?
You're right.
And give your address to them, right? And now we do it without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
It was problematic until enough people did it that it just became normal. And I think we do that with mental health a lot too, where we identify with the symptoms, the reaction we're having. I have depression.
Yeah.
You know, or I am depressed. It becomes who we are instead of something you're just experiencing at a given point in time.
Yeah. Which I think is a good example, the juxtaposition of it, of like the way in which we interact with services, goods and services, is straightforward. Here's the transaction, here's the money, done. But anytime you enter the realm, and this is just a personal belief, but anytime you enter the realm of the unseen, right, your mental health, your spiritual fitness, right, and your well-being, there's only so much that norms are going to do, right? Before you just, ultimately you would just realize what the professionals already know, which is this stuff is predictable, and the epidemiology of it, like you were touching on in your bio earlier, you know, cued me in, because it's like, there's the old sage wisdom. If everybody is this way, nobody's this way, right? And that's where we're approaching that bottleneck where this has to be made up, right? Because that's just not the way it works, right? Not all of a sudden.
It's not possible everyone is the same.
Yeah, it's not like everybody woke up and was ADD all of a sudden. This is not the way it works. Unless, I don't know, we all took a trip to Flint, Michigan and drank the water. I don't know.
That's a whole different kind of issue. But yeah. And I think that comes back to what we already talked about, though, of just trying to find a place to belong. So I do a lot of work and research in generational trauma and epigenetics and how our experiences essentially can change parts of our DNA, little tags on it that we're seeing like actually create greater propensity for trauma to be genetically inherited throughout multiple generations. But to that point, if this is what's been normalized and what I've grown up in, and that just becomes the way it is. And so everyone in my family has depression, or everyone in my family has addiction, right? And now it becomes an anticipatory thing. So we're kind of waiting for it to happen. Then we get into all kinds of thought processes of attention bias and skew, right? So we start doing things that create those circumstances.
Right.
And then we get stuck in it, and it just keeps repeating over and over again. Versus someone kind of saying, hey, it doesn't have to be that way. It can change if you want it to, but you have to want it to change.
Right. Which is why your perspectives tonight, too, I really appreciate. And is just going to be helpful for anybody who comes across this, because proper assessment, not even just clinically, but absolutely, if you have access to a clinician, any resources at all, and someone willing to sit down and do a proper assessment, and you're going to engage with it, you're going to get better, because proper assessment is the foundation. Right? It's like when you were talking about, let's say, like a family disease like alcoholism, I can't tell you how many people, because this is my area of expertise, come in and they're terrified that they're going to become an alcoholic, or the long lines of alcoholics, and it really is just the codependency, the threads underneath of shame, abuse, neglect, and abandonment over and over and over and over again. And sure, the codependent who may not have an unmanageable problem with alcohol is drinking a little bit more than they probably would care to. But once the proper assessment and the symptoms are broken down, the awareness clicks in, and that problem's no longer a thing. Now the real problem is center stage. There's the pain. That's what we have to address. Maybe there actually is another type of addiction underneath. Now we're scratching the bottom of the barrel. That's the work, right? And I think when that's presented, this is why the internet is so successful in misinformation, is because when presented with that, right, that type of work, it's like, no.
That sounds like a lot.
Yeah, that's awful. I don't want to do that shit. That's going to sting. It's going to hurt. It's ugly. It smells. I don't want to look at any of that, right? This is nice. This, what I've created over here, let's stick with that. And it's obvious. It's most often misinformation.
And the reality is, it's all hard, though.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep living in this pattern of what you know, or you wouldn't be coming to therapy in the first place, or looking for the answer on TikTok or whatever social media, because you're looking for an answer. That's why you connected to that information. Yeah. So this is hard. Doing this work is hard. One is shorter term than the other. Like, pick your hard.
Yeah.
They're both hard. Life is hard. Pick your hard. Which one are you most willing to invest in for yourself? One is just going to keep perpetuating a cycle. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's to clarify as well, because I hear it in what you're sharing too, is like therapy's one way. It's one hard you can choose, but really ultimately the sell here, if it's coming across your feed, is addressing your distress, all right?
The source of the distress, get to the root of it.
Right. Without the misinformation, cutting through the noise and taking action that works, that's the route. The other route is the actual paradoxical lifelong route. If you just ignore it, say, nah, I'm going to push this away, there's your lifelong route of hard.
Yeah. Right. I found the coping skill, but that means I need the coping skill now for the rest of my life.
Right.
It's like I broke my leg. Instead of getting it set and letting it heal correctly, I'm going to use a crutch for the rest of my life. It hurts to get it set, but then it can heal, and I don't need the coping mechanism anymore. Right. It's tough, but it's always doable.
Yeah.
It's just finding the right way to start. And I think as clinicians, too, we really have to appreciate and take on the level of responsibility that comes with that, because if we're not educating ourselves and updating ourselves on new information and new research, and because we're always learning about the brain and why we have the reactions we have as human beings, but if we're not continually doing our own due diligence to learn how to get to the source of the distress, and we just stay up here on the surface with whatever the client's bringing to the session, and we just kind of keep circling around the crisis of the week, we're part of that cycle of perpetuating hurt at some point, because it's not helping. It's just saying, yep, keep coming back, and we'll just keep sticking the Band-Aid on the thing, because that's what you wanted to talk about today. But we never really get to the crux of the issue down here, so that there's never actually healing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite a balance, right? It is, and then we're not the only profession, but we're certainly one of a few that works themselves out of a job. And I actually quite like that, because at some point I want a natural conclusion to my career, and I'm gonna work them all out of my office. I'll tell you what.
I mean, how great is it though when you see somebody like find that healing and they realize, like, I can do this and I don't need to be here anymore. Like, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite parts of my career is the community aspect, right? Of like for me, and this is just unique, not so unique, but unique to the population I work with, of like when you see them connect with other people outside of this setting where they're now of service in the proper ways, and those people are, and they're just lit up. It's like, yes, now we're living, right? See, this is what we were missing out on in our little hole.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Let's get out and live.
Yeah. And we share the right information across all these platforms.
Yeah.
It can spread too.
Yeah. And
that's good stuff.
And then they go and they spread their wings, and it's also that aspect too of like, this is, I think therapists especially, kind of just addressing them. It's like people are always so terrified of like, well, am I going to fill? It's like, don't worry about filling a slot. If you have a practice, people are going to show up, right? Who need the services, but they can't show up if you just have it chock full of people who are just coming in, like you were saying, just to, this is what I want to talk about this week. You have to make the space too.
When I think we were talking earlier about, when you find your thing that you really excel in, your area, right? Like the work comes to you.
Yeah.
And so, we need to sustain a business. We need paychecks too, that kind of stuff. You can't do that with an empty office. But when you do the real work and you facilitate healing, right? Because we're not the ones doing the healing. They do that themselves. But when you can facilitate it in the right way, that spreads. Yeah. And then the work comes to you because people want healing. They just need to know that it's possible and where to go to get it, right? I think when we stop worrying about just having a person in the slot and we focus on what we're actually trying to do, just help people heal wounds, the slots will get filled. Right.
Yeah. And in the way that how you were saying that you're good at.
Yeah.
There are things that you're good at that I'll never in this field be good at.
Yeah.
And I'm at peace with this. I had a clinician, because of the Facebook groups, they reach out like, why, like, you have a practice, why are you bringing therapists on? It's like, well, number one, I'm new here. I don't know anybody. Number two, it's none of your fucking business. But number three, this was the big part, is like when I get it's like when I get a referral, I don't specialize in everything. I specialize in 12-step recovery and getting people's asses into the rooms. That's my specialty. I'm really good at it. I've been doing it for 13 years. But if someone comes in and they need EMDR, I'm not your guy. So I need to know who down the street is good at that and wants to do that. I don't want to do it. I'll save my shoulder for when I get my old ass up on a mound to play baseball again. I don't want to,
There's no reason to gatekeep in that way. Like, we don't have to be the person who specializes in everything and takes every client that walks in the door. But if we're focused on just filling the slot, and that's what we're doing, I mean, we have an ethical code of beneficence and malfeasance, right? Do good and do no harm. And if I'm taking people that I know you have a better background to help because they're working through addiction and I don't, and the trauma is not the source, right? Like, why would I not send them to the person that knows how to do that?
Right.
It's like, you're not going to go to a dentist because you have an earache. Like, as a doctor, but it's not the same. Like, go to the person that has the expertise, and we should be able to help facilitate that. It's hard for us to find the right people. Imagine not having those resources or connections or knowledge, and you're trying to find the right therapist. It's like overwhelming.
Well, there's a revival around it, but the dying art of like our patients and clients, wherever you're located, like that's what they're, the same way they would expect it of a doctor, that's what they're expecting of us. It's like a big underlying issue underneath addiction is trauma. Right? So if it dips outside of a realm of, let's say, like stabilization into assessing the trauma, I refer for that longer term, let's say, like, or targeted EMDR, and then they come back and, and we piece these things together. It's like a lot of therapists, especially young ones, aren't comfortable with like, oh, I just got an intake. Let me assess these things through, do what I need to do to open that up and get them to a proper other clinician. But that's what our clients would hope that we're doing.
That we can say like, hey, here's a better place for you to get to what you need. I think that comes too from the fear of losing a client, right? Because we're like, again, got to have a job, but also that fear of like, if I say that I can't help you, like it's hard to tell you no. And so I feel like I just have to figure out how to do it. But it's that's not my skill set.
Yeah.
So it's more helpful to you to get you to the person who can do that thing for you.
Yeah.
For whatever your thing is that you're ready to work on. Maybe you have trauma and addiction. You're not ready to work on the trauma yet. Or the addiction is too prominent to get to that trauma right now.
Yeah.
So let's figure out where you're at and kind of meet you where you are, and let that part be okay to not be okay. And then we can start to address it in the way that you have control over it.
Right. Yeah. Make it more manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because right now it's unmanageable.
Yeah, exactly. It's not working.
Yep.
So,
I have a question that I ask everybody when they're first time on the show. If we were going to build a mental health amusement park and you got to build a ride there, what would you call it? What color would it be? What would it do?
oh, what would I call it? I'm terrible at naming things like this. It definitely would be like a boat ride on the water, though, because that's just where everybody should be at some point. It would just meander around a lake. It wouldn't have to be anywhere at any point in time. It would just go where you felt like you needed to go, without a rule, without structure. You would just kind of wander around, and it would be all kinds of colors.
Nice.
Yeah,
Would you give it a specific name? You know what it reminds me of? It's like the Tom Sawyer boat ride at Disneyland.
And that's
So you
kind
just
of what I'm
name it-
picturing. Yeah. Yeah.
You just name it after you.
Well, yeah. I'm like, I don't know what I would call it. Yeah, Stephanie's Space.
There you go. Cool.
Yeah, just something on the water. Any excuse to get on the water really is
Nice.
all I need.
We like it. Any last messages for a captive audience, things that you think that our viewers might need to hear tonight?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just don't be afraid to challenge yourself and to explore, whether it's as a clinician and you're working on dealing with your own insecurities or areas of vulnerability, doing your own work. If you're the client and you're scared about coming into therapy, totally understandable and normal, but recognizing that even though it's scary and it's challenging, it's absolutely doable, and it's okay to take that step, because all things are hard. So pick the hard and what gets you closer to the goal that you want for the life you want to live. It's all doable.
Yeah.
So push through the fear.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Stephanie Miller. We break the cycle here every Friday night, but in August we will be switching to Thursdays. More information on all the social media as that comes. We will see you next week here on Friday at the same time. Take care. We love you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.